The emergency beacon cut through the void of space like a desperate scream, its signal reaching Earth's deep space monitoring station at exactly 1437 Universal Standard Time. Commander Sarah Chen was 3 hours into her shift when the alert klaxons began their urgent wailing, jolting her from the routine scanning protocols that had defined her last 6 months stationed at Luna. 7. "What do we have, Rodriguez?" Chen called to her communications officer, already moving toward the central console where red warning lights painted the sterile white walls in ominous crimson. "Unknown signal pattern, ma'am," Lieutenant Carlos Rodriguez replied, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as data streams cascaded down his screen. "But it's definitely artificial. The mathematical precision is too perfect for natural phenomena." Chen felt her pulse quicken. After decades of scanning the void, listening for any sign that humanity wasn't alone in the universe, this moment had always seemed more like science fiction than possibility. She leaned over Rodriguez's shoulder, studying the wavelength patterns that pulsed with mechanical regularity. "Can you decode it?" "Working on it now." "The signal is using a complex mathematical sequence based on prime numbers. Whoever sent this wanted to make sure it was recognized as intelligent communication." Rodriguez paused, his brow furrowing as new data appeared. "Commander, this isn't just a greeting. It's a distress call." The next few minutes passed in tense silence as Rodriguez worked his magic on the alien transmission. Chen found herself pacing the small command center, her mind racing through first contact protocols that had been theoretical until this moment. The weight of representing all humanity in this historic moment pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. "Got it," Rodriguez suddenly exclaimed. "The signal originates from a point approximately 47 light-years from Earth, in the direction of the constellation Lyra. The message is simple but urgent. Research Station Gamma 9 under attack. Hostile force overwhelming defensive capabilities. Immediate assistance required. We'll share technological knowledge in exchange for aid." Chen stopped pacing. "They're asking for military assistance?" "It appears so, ma'am, and there's more. The signal includes star charts, showing safe navigation routes to their location, and basic information about their attackers. According to this data, they're facing something called the Devourers, a species that apparently consumes entire civilizations." The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence wasn't a peaceful meeting of minds or an exchange of scientific knowledge. It was a call for help from a dying civilization under attack by something even more dangerous. "Get me Admiral Morrison on priority channel," Chen ordered, "and compile everything we have on this signal. If we're going to help them, we need to move fast." The next 18 hours passed in a blur of activity that transformed Earth's military infrastructure from a planetary defense force into humanity's first interstellar navy. Admiral Morrison, a grizzled veteran of Earth's unified military forces, found himself facing decisions that no human commander had ever confronted. "Let me understand this correctly," Morrison said, addressing the emergency council session via holographic conference. Representatives from every major nation sat around the virtual table, their faces reflecting the same mixture of excitement and terror that Morrison felt. "An alien species is asking for our help against another alien species that apparently destroys entire civilizations for food?" Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, despite having never seen an actual alien, nodded grimly. "Based on the limited data we've received, the Devourers appear to be a nomadic species that travels from system to system, consuming all biological matter and leaving dead worlds behind. The beings asking for our help call themselves the Keepers, apparently a research-focused civilization dedicated to preserving knowledge. And they want our military assistance?" Defense Secretary Wang asked, his skepticism evident. "What could humanity possibly offer that their advanced technology cannot handle?" Morrison pulled up the tactical analysis that had kept him awake for the past 12 hours. "According to their data packet, galactic civilizations have evolved beyond kinetic weapons. They use energy-based systems, plasma cannons, gravitational disruptors, exotic matter manipulators. Impressive technology, but apparently not effective against the Devourer's adaptive shielding." He paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. "However, their analysis of our weapons technology suggests something interesting. They specifically mention our primitive but effective kinetic systems and express curiosity about our electromagnetic acceleration technology." Secretary Wang looked confused. "You mean our railguns?" "Exactly. What we consider our most advanced weapon systems, they see as fascinatingly primitive. But here's the interesting part. Their energy shields are designed to deflect energy-based attacks, They've never encountered civilizations that still use kinetic weapons at the scales we've developed. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Dr. Vasquez was the first to speak. You're suggesting that our primitive weapons might be effective against enemies that have adapted to counter advanced energy weapons? It's possible, Morrison admitted, and frankly it might be our only advantage. The Keepers are offering to share their faster-than-light travel technology in exchange for military assistance. This could be humanity's chance to join the galactic community, but only if we can prove ourselves useful. President Sarah Martinez leaned forward in her chair. What kind of time frame are we looking at? The Keepers estimate they have perhaps 6 months before their remaining defensive systems fail completely. Using their provided navigation data and FTL technology, we could reach their system in approximately 4 months. That gives us 2 months to prepare a response fleet. 2 months to build humanity's first interstellar navy, Defense Secretary Wang muttered. What exactly did you have in mind, Admiral? Morrison activated a new holographic display showing the blueprints for a vessel that represented the culmination of human military engineering. I present the UES Railgun, our first dedicated interstellar warship. The design prioritizes 3 core principles: maximum kinetic firepower, redundant defensive systems, and modular construction for rapid deployment. The ship that appeared in the hologram was unlike anything humanity had ever built. Nearly 2 kilometers long, its hull was dominated by massive electromagnetic acceleration rails that ran the entire length of the vessel. Secondary and tertiary rail systems provided multiple firing angles, while the rear third of the ship housed fusion reactors powerful enough to supply a small city. The primary armament consists of 12 main rail cannons capable of accelerating tungsten projectiles to 15% of light speed, Morrison explained. Secondary systems include rapid-fire rail systems for point defense and close combat, along with conventional missile systems adapted with the Keepers' provided shield-piercing technology. Vasquez studied the specifications with growing amazement. The power requirements for this system would be enormous, which is why we're using fusion reactors based on the Keepers' technology. They've provided us with reactor designs that are centuries ahead of our current capabilities, but simple enough that we can construct them with existing infrastructure. The trade-off is that most of the ship's internal space is dedicated to power generation and ammunition storage. What about crew accommodations? President Martinez asked. Minimal, Morrison admitted. This is a warship, not an exploration vessel. The crew of 200 will live in cramped but functional quarters. The Keepers have provided life support technology that allows for much more efficient air and water recycling, which helps, but comfort was not a priority in this design. The next phase of the presentation revealed the true scope of Morrison's plan. The UES Railgun was not intended to fight alone. The proposal called for the rapid construction of 5 identical vessels, creating humanity's first battle group designed specifically for interstellar combat. 5 ships in 2 months? Secretary Wang looked incredulous. How is that even possible? Global cooperation on a scale never before attempted, Morrison replied simply. Every major industrial nation contributes their most advanced manufacturing capabilities. The Chinese provide rare earth elements and precision manufacturing. The Americans contribute their most advanced computer systems and fusion research. Europeans provide materials engineering and logistics coordination. The Russians contribute their expertise in large-scale construction projects. President Martinez nodded slowly. And if we succeed? If we actually manage to help the Keepers defeat these devourers? Then humanity becomes a recognized member of the galactic community, Dr. Vasquez said. Access to technologies that could solve every major problem facing our species. Clean energy, faster-than-light travel, advanced medical technology, terraforming capabilities. The Keepers' data suggests there are thousands of intelligent species in our galaxy, with trading networks and cooperative agreements that span entire star systems. And if we fail? Wang asked quietly. Morrison's expression grew grim. If we failed, the Devourers consume the Keepers and continue their expansion pattern. Based on their historical movement, Earth would be in their path within approximately 50 years. This isn't just about helping alien allies. It's about preventing a threat that will eventually reach our doorstep anyway. The vote was unanimous. Within 6 hours of the council session's conclusion, construction began simultaneously at shipyards on 4 continents and 2 orbital platforms. Humanity's greatest industrial effort since the rebuilding after the climate wars had begun, driven by the desperate hope that their most primitive weapons might prove to be their greatest strength. Commander Sarah Chen found herself promoted to captain and given command of the lead vessel in humanity's first interstellar fleet. As she stood in the construction bay watching thousands of workers assembling the UES railgun's massive frame, she couldn't help but marvel at the irony. Humanity's entry into galactic civilization would be marked not by diplomacy or scientific achievement, but by their talent for making things go very fast in straight lines. The Keepers had asked for help from a species they considered primitively violent. They had no idea they were about to discover what happened when that primitive violence was guided by advanced intelligence and desperate necessity. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had never truly abandoned kinetic weapons. They had simply been perfecting them. In the vast construction bay, sparks flew from welding stations as humanity prepared to introduce the universe to the true meaning of kinetic warfare. The countdown had begun, and somewhere 47 light-years away, an alien research station continued broadcasting its desperate plea for help, unaware that salvation was being built one railgun at a time. The Devourers had adapted to counter every advanced weapon system the galaxy could produce, but they had never faced an enemy that considered a chunk of metal moving at significant fractions of light speed to be the height of sophisticated warfare. They were about to learn. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES railgun, watching through the massive viewport as Earth slowly rotated beneath them. 48 hours ago, this ship had been nothing more than blueprints and desperate hope. Now it was humanity's first interstellar warship, bristling with electromagnetic acceleration systems that could punch holes through small moons. "Final systems check complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, the ship's chief engineer. Webb was a compact man with prematurely gray hair, a side effect of spending the last 2 months supervising the installation of alien reactor technology with only 4 hours of sleep per night. Fusion reactors are operating at peak efficiency, and all 12 main rail systems show green across the board. Chen nodded, though her attention remained focused on the 4 other vessels maintaining formation around them. The UES Kinetic, UES Velocity, UES Impact, and US Momentum formed humanity's first battle group, each ship identical in design but crewed by the finest military personnel Earth could provide. 2,000 humans total, carrying the hopes and fears of an entire species into unknown space. Communications. Any final word from command? Lieutenant Rodriguez, promoted from his monitoring station role, looked up from his console. Admiral Morrison sends his regards and reminds us that we're making history. Also, the Keepers have confirmed that Research Station Gamma 9 is still operational, though their defensive perimeter has contracted significantly. Understood. Chen settled into her command chair, a piece of furniture that had been hastily designed to accommodate the gravitational stresses of faster-than-light travel. All stations report ready? The responses came quickly from each department. Navigation, weapons, engineering, life support, and communications all confirmed their readiness for humanity's first journey beyond the solar system. Chen felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a familiar coat. She had trained for this moment her entire career, though she had never imagined it would involve alien technology and interstellar warfare. Very well, navigation. Engage the FTL drive. The transition was unlike anything described in humanity's science fiction. There was no dramatic tunnel of light or sense of incredible speed. Instead, the stars outside simply changed position, as if someone had redecorated the universe while they weren't looking. The sensation was more disorienting than dramatic, leaving Chen with a vague feeling of motion sickness and the unsettling knowledge that they were now traveling faster than light itself. FTL drive functioning normally, reported Navigator Sarah Kim, studying readouts that combined human engineering with Keeper technology in ways that would have been impossible months earlier. Estimated travel time to the Keeper system, 4 months, 2 weeks, 3 days. The long journey ahead would be humanity's first extended experience with interstellar travel, and Chen knew that the success of their mission would depend as much on maintaining crew morale as on their weapon systems. She had spent considerable time planning activities and training exercises to keep her people sharp during the months-long voyage. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We are now officially traveling faster than light, making every person on this vessel part of human history. Our mission is clear. Assist the Keepers in defending their research station against the Devourers, and prove that humanity deserves a place in the galactic community." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "The Keepers chose to contact us because they believed our kinetic weapons might be effective against enemies that have adapted to energy-based attacks. We are about to test that theory under combat conditions. I have complete confidence in our weapon systems, our tactics, and most importantly in each of you. The first week of FTL travel passed smoothly, with daily drills and weapons testing keeping the crew occupied. The railgun systems performed flawlessly in the vacuum of faster-than-light space, though the experience of firing weapons while traveling at impossible speeds created some disorienting effects that required adjustment to targeting systems. It was during the second leak that the Keepers made direct contact with the human fleet. "Incoming transmission," Rodriguez reported during the morning shift. "It's coming from the Keeper research station, but the signal is much stronger than their original distress beacon." "On screen," Chen ordered, though she had no idea what to expect from humanity's first real-time conversation with an alien intelligence. The being that appeared on their main screen was simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. Roughly humanoid in basic structure, the Keeper stood perhaps 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and delicate features that suggested a lifetime spent in low-gravity environments. Its skin had a translucent quality that revealed underlying circulatory systems, and its large eyes held an intelligence that Chen found both comforting and unnerving. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the being spoke, its voice transmitted through translation systems that the Keepers had provided along with their navigation data. "I am Keeper Veln, current administrator of Research Station Gamma 9. We are greatly pleased to see that your species has accepted our request for assistance." Chen stood from her command chair, feeling the historic weight of the moment. "Keeper Veln, I am Captain Sarah Chen, commanding the United Earth ship Railgun and our battle group. We have come as requested to assist in your defense against the Devourers." Veln's expression seemed to show approval, though Chen found it difficult to read alien facial expressions. "Your journey time is excellent, Captain Chen. We had estimated human travel capabilities based on your current technology, but your adaptation of our FTL systems shows impressive engineering capability." "We had excellent teachers," Chen replied diplomatically. "What is the current status of your defensive situation?" The Keeper's demeanor became more serious. "The Devourers arrived in our system 6 weeks ago and began their standard consumption pattern. They have already stripped 3 outer planets of all biological matter and are currently processing the mineral resources. Our defensive platforms have slowed their advance, but our energy-based weapons show decreasing effectiveness as they adapt." A new display appeared on the human bridge showing the Keeper system in tactical detail. Chen studied the information with growing concern. The Devourers operated dozens of vessels, each the size of a small city, that systematically approached inhabited worlds like a plague of mechanical locusts. "How many Devourer ships are we facing?" Chen asked. "Current count indicates 47 primary vessels and approximately 200 support craft. However, these numbers increase daily as they process consumed matter into additional ships." Veln paused. "Captain Chen, I must ask directly about your kinetic weapons. Our preliminary analysis suggests they operate on principles we have not encountered in galactic warfare." Chen felt a moment of pride mixed with apprehension. "Our railguns use electromagnetic acceleration to propel solid projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The concept is simple, but our implementation has been refined over centuries of development." "This is fascinating," Veln replied. "Galactic civilizations abandoned kinetic weapons approximately 50,000 years ago when energy-based systems became more efficient. The Devourer's adaptive shielding has never encountered high-velocity solid projectiles because no current civilization uses such systems." The implication was clear, and Chen felt a thrill of anticipation. Humanity's primitive weapons might actually provide a decisive advantage against an enemy that had adapted to counter every advanced system the galaxy could produce. "Keeper Veln, we'll need detailed information about Devourer ship construction and their adaptive shielding systems to maximize our effectiveness." "Of course, we are transmitting all available tactical data now." New information began flooding into the human fleet's computers, showing Devourer vessel designs that were unlike anything in human experience. The Devourer ships were biological as much as technological, with hulls that seemed to grow rather than being constructed. Their adaptive shielding systems were living organisms that evolved in real time to counter incoming attacks, becoming more resistant with each encounter. "This is incredible," muttered Lieutenant Commander Webb, studying the engineering data. "Their ships are essentially living creatures with technological augmentations. The adaptive shielding is a biological membrane that learns from each energy attack." Chen studied the information with a tactical mind. "But biological systems have physical limitations. Can their adaptive membranes handle kinetic impacts?" "Unknown," Velman admitted. "No civilization has tested kinetic weapons against Devourer forces for thousands of years. Your fleet represents the first such attempt in recorded galactic history." The conversation continued for several hours as the Keepers provided detailed intelligence about Devourer tactics, ship capabilities, and historical behavior patterns. Chen began to understand the true scope of the threat they faced. The Devourers were not just another hostile species. They were a force of nature that had been consuming civilizations for millennia with mechanical efficiency. "Captain," Veln said as their communication session neared its end, There is something else you should know. Word of your species' response to our distress call has spread throughout the galactic communication networks. Many civilizations are watching to see how your kinetic weapons perform against the Devourers. Are you saying we have an audience? Chen asked. Indeed. If your weapons prove effective, it could revolutionize galactic warfare and provide hope for civilizations that have been defenseless against Devourer expansion. However, if your attack fails, Veln left the statement unfinished, but the implications were clear. After ending communication with the Keepers, Chen called a meeting of her senior officers and the commanders of the other 4 vessels via holographic conference. The cramped conference room aboard the UES railgun filled with the projected images of humanity's finest military leaders, each face showing the same mixture of determination and concern. You've all reviewed the tactical data, Chen began. I want honest assessments of our chances. Commander Lisa Park of the UES Kinetic spoke first. The Devourer ships are massive and heavily shielded, but they appear to rely entirely on energy-based defensive systems. Our tungsten projectiles should penetrate their adaptive membranes without difficulty. Assuming we can get close enough to engage effectively, added Commander Robert Zhang from the UES Velocity. These creatures have been consuming civilizations for thousands of years. They'll have tactical experience we can't match. Lieutenant Commander Webb pulled up weapon specifications on his tablet. The power output calculations are encouraging. Our main railguns can deliver more kinetic energy than most galactic civilizations use in their primary energy weapons. The question is whether raw kinetic force can overcome their adaptive biology. There's only one way to find out, Chen said grimly. We run our battle simulations again using the new Keeper data, and we prepare for the possibility that we might be the last hope for an entire civilization. The next 3 months passed in intensive preparation. Daily battle drills using holographic Devourer ships became routine, with each engagement teaching the human crews more about fighting enemies that literally adapted to counter their attacks. The key insight came from studying biological adaptation patterns. While Devourer shields could evolve to resist energy weapons, physical adaptation to kinetic impacts would require structural changes that took time. It's like the difference between developing sunscreen and growing thicker skin, Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the fleet's xenobiologist, explained during one tactical briefing. Energy adaptation can happen quickly because it's essentially a surface phenomenon, but adapting to high-velocity impacts would require fundamental changes to their hull structure. As they approached the Keeper system, long-range sensors began detecting the signs of Devourer presence. Entire worlds had been stripped of their atmospheres, leaving behind dead rocks that sparkled with mining operations. The scale of destruction was breathtaking in its thoroughness. My God, whispered Navigator Kim, studying the sensor readouts. They've completely consumed 3 planets in just 4 months. And they're working on the 4th, Chen observed, watching the tactical display that showed Devourer vessels systematically processing an entire world like some cosmic mining operation. How long until we reach the research station? 6 hours until we drop out of FTL at the system's edge, Kim reported. The Keepers are maintaining position near the 5th planet, using their defensive platforms to slow Devourer advance. Chen felt the familiar pre-battle tension settling over her shoulders. In 6 hours, humanity would either prove themselves worthy of joining the galactic community, or they would die trying. Either way, they would demonstrate that humans refuse to quietly accept extinction. All hands prepare for combat operations, she announced throughout the fleet. We are about to engage an enemy that has been consuming civilization since before humans developed written language, but they have never faced the combined determination of Earth's finest warriors armed with weapons they cannot adapt to counter. She paused, looking around the bridge at the faces of her crew. Each person represented years of training and preparation for a moment like this. They were humanity's champions, carrying the hopes of billions into battle against impossible odds. Today we teach the galaxy that sometimes the old ways are the best ways, especially when you do them better than anyone thought possible. All ships, prepare for FTL dropout. It's time to show the Devourers what human kinetic weapons can do. The stars shifted one final time as the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Keeper system. Before them spread a battlefield that would determine the fate of civilizations, and humanity's railguns were about to write their names in the history of galactic warfare. The Keeper system materialized around them like a vision of cosmic horror. What should have been a thriving solar system with multiple inhabited worlds had become a graveyard of stripped planets and debris fields. The sensors aboard the UES railgun painted a tactical picture that made even hardened military veterans pause in shock. Jesus Christ, muttered Lieutenant Commander Webb, staring at the sensor readouts. They've completely hollowed out the third planet. It's just an empty shell now. Captain Chen studied the main tactical display, watching the movement patterns of devourer vessels as they systematically processed the remains of an entire civilization. The enemy ships moved with mechanical precision, each one the size of Manhattan but organic in appearance, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that suggested living tissue rather than constructed metal. "Tactical analysis, Commander Hayes," Chen ordered. Fleet's xenobiologist activated her console, overlaying biological assessment data onto the tactical display. "Captain, these vessels are unlike anything in our xenological databases. They appear to be hybrid organisms, part biological creature, part technological construct. The adaptive shielding systems are definitely organic membranes that respond to energy-based attacks." "And the adaptive process?" Chen asked. "Based on Keeper data, the membranes can restructure their molecular composition within minutes of encountering new energy signatures. However," Hayes paused, highlighting specific sections of the Devourer vessels, "the structural integrity of the ships themselves appears to depend on internal pressure systems and organic frameworks that wouldn't adapt quickly to kinetic damage." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his communication station. "Research Station Gamma 9 is requesting immediate conference." On screen, the Keeper appeared haggard, his translucent skin showing stress patterns that even humans could recognize. Behind him, the research station's command center showed signs of recent battle damage, with emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across alien technology. "Captain Chen, we are greatly relieved by your arrival," Velm began without preamble. "The Devourers have accelerated their consumption pattern. We estimate 48 hours before they complete processing of the fourth planet and begin their assault on our final defensive perimeter." Chen leaned forward in her command chair. "What's their current disposition?" 47 primary vessels arranged in 3 consumption groups, each working on different sections of the fourth planet. Support craft number approximately 300, handling material transport and processing operations. Their command vessel, Velm highlighted a massive organic ship at the center of the formation, is 3 times larger than their standard vessels and appears to coordinate all operations. The human captain studied the enemy formation with a tactical eye. The Devourers had spread themselves across a wide area to maximize their consumption efficiency, but this also meant they couldn't concentrate their defensive capabilities against a focused attack. "Keeper Velm, can your remaining defensive platforms provide fire support during our attack?" "Affirmative, though our energy weapons have shown decreasing effectiveness as the Devourers adapt. We can perhaps provide distraction while your kinetic systems engage primary targets." Chen nodded. "Understood. We'll coordinate our approach with your defensive fire to maximize confusion among their forces." She paused, considering the tactical situation. "Velm, once we engage, how quickly do you expect the Devourers to adapt their tactics?" "Unknown, Captain. Their behavior patterns suggest high intelligence, but they have never faced kinetic weapons at the scale your vessels represent. This will be unprecedented in galactic warfare history." After ending the communication, Chen called for immediate tactical planning session with all ship commanders. The holographic conference room filled with the projected images of humanity's finest naval officers, each face reflecting the gravity of their situation. "We have one chance to make this work," Chen began without preamble. "The Devourers expect energy weapons because that's all they've faced for 50,000 years. Our advantage lies in complete tactical surprise," Commander Park, of the UES, Kinetic, studied the tactical display. "I recommend we focus our initial attack on their command vessel, remove their coordination capability, and the remaining ships might become less effective." "Negative," disagreed Commander Zhang from the UES Velocity. "The command vessel will be the most heavily defended. We should engage their consumption groups first, eliminate their ability to process new resources." Lieutenant Commander Webb highlighted sections of the Devourer formation on his tablet. "Actually, I think we should target their support craft first. Those smaller vessels appear to be less heavily shielded, and destroying them will disrupt their logistics network." Chen considered each proposal carefully. The tactical challenge was unprecedented. No human commander had ever faced an enemy that could adapt to their weapons in real time, and no galactic civilization had used kinetic weapons against Devourers in recorded history. "We're going to do all 3, she decided, but in sequence, not simultaneously. First, we eliminate their support craft with rapid-fire rail systems to test their adaptation capabilities. Second, we engage their consumption groups with main battery fire to assess the effectiveness of our heavy weapons. Finally, we concentrate all vessels against their command ship." "That's a lot of assumptions about how quickly they can adapt," Commander Park observed. Which is why we maintain maximum fleet speed throughout the engagement, Chen replied. If our kinetic systems prove ineffective, we'll need to withdraw and reassess. But if they work, she left the statement hanging, but every officer understood the implications. The preparation phase took 6 hours, with each ship conducting final weapons checks and coordinating their attack patterns down to the microsecond. The human fleet moved toward the Devourer formation at maximum sublight speed, their railguns charging and targeting systems locked onto predetermined enemy vessels. Range to target 1,000,000 kilometers in closing, Navigator Kim reported. All vessels report ready for combat operations. Chen felt the familiar calm that came before battle, her mind focusing to crystal clarity as months of preparation culminated in this moment. Open fleet communications. All vessels, this is Railgun Actual. We are about to engage an enemy that has been consuming civilization since before humanity discovered fire. They have never faced kinetic weapons, and they are about to learn why humans never abandoned the principle of hitting things very hard. She paused, looking around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Each person represented the best of humanity's military tradition, volunteers who had accepted the possibility of death in service to their species. Our weapons are simple in concept, but devastating in execution. We are going to introduce the Devourers to the true meaning of kinetic warfare. All vessels weapons free. Commence firing sequence. The first salvo from humanity's railguns was a thing of terrible beauty. Tungsten projectiles, each weighing several tons, accelerated to 15% of light speed by electromagnetic fields powerful enough to supply entire cities. The projectiles themselves were invisible to visual observation, but their passage through space created brilliant streaks of ionized particles that painted lines of fire across the void. The effect on the Devourer support craft was immediate and devastating. The organic vessels, designed to resist energy-based attacks, had no defense against projectiles moving at relativistic velocities. Tungsten rounds punched through their adaptive membranes like bullets through tissue paper, continuing through the ship's internal structures and out the other side, leaving catastrophic damage in their wake. Direct hits on all targeted support vessels, reported Weapons Officer Lieutenant Sarah Murphy, her voice tight with professional excitement. Targets are showing massive structural damage. Several have broken apart completely. Chen watched the tactical display as dozens of Devourer support craft simply disintegrated under the kinetic assault. The surviving ships began moving in seemingly random patterns, their adaptive membranes shifting color and texture as they attempted to respond to an attack type they had never encountered. Their membranes are trying to adapt, Dr. Hayes reported from her biological monitoring station. But they're failing. The organic material simply cannot restructure fast enough to provide meaningful resistance against high-velocity kinetic impacts. Second phase, Chen ordered. All vessels engage consumption groups with main battery fire. The next salvo was even more impressive. 5 human warships fired their primary railguns simultaneously, sending massive tungsten projectiles screaming across space toward the Devourer vessels that were methodically consuming the 4th planet. The kinetic energy release when these projectiles struck their targets was equivalent to nuclear weapons, but concentrated into impacts smaller than a human fist. The results exceeded even optimistic projections. Devourer vessels that had resisted Keeper energy weapons for months were torn apart by impacts they had no ability to counter. Their adaptive membranes, evolved over millennia to deflect energy-based attacks, provided no meaningful protection against solid projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. My God, whispered Commander Park over the fleet communications channel. They're not adapting at all. Their shielding is completely useless against kinetic impacts. The tactical display showed the Devourer formation beginning to collapse as their consumption operations ground to a halt. Ships that had been methodically processing planetary matter were now trying to regroup and respond to an attack unlike anything in their evolutionary experience. All vessels are attempting to reach minimum safe engagement distance, Navigator Kim reported. They're trying to get close enough that our railguns can't target effectively. Chen nodded. This was the moment she had been preparing for throughout the long journey from Earth. All vessels, implement close combat protocols. Switch to rapid-fire rail systems and maintain maximum fleet speed. Don't let them get inside our firing envelope. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. Human warships, designed around the principle of kinetic superiority, engaged alien vessels evolved to counter energy weapons in close-quarters combat that stretched across millions of cubic kilometers of space. Railguns fired continuously, their electromagnetic acceleration systems cycling at rates that pushed human engineering to its limits. The Devourers, despite their adaptation capabilities, found themselves facing an enemy they could not counter. Every kinetic projectile that struck their hulls caused catastrophic damage that their organic repair systems could not quickly address. Ships that had survived thousands of years of galactic warfare began breaking apart under impacts from weapons that galactic civilization considered primitively obsolete. "Captain," Dr. Hayes called out over the sound of railguns cycling, "I'm detecting something unusual. The Devourer vessels are releasing some kind of biological agents into space." Chen checked her tactical display, noting new contacts appearing around the damaged enemy ships. Analysis? "They appear to be spores or eggs of some kind, millions of them, spreading throughout the battle area." Hayes paused, running additional scans. "Captain, I think they're trying to seed new vessels. If they can't adapt their existing ships, they might be attempting to grow new ones that can resist kinetic impacts." The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. The Devourers weren't just adapting their existing forces. They were literally attempting to evolve new ship types in real time. How long would such a process take? Unknown, but based on their biological efficiency, possibly only days or weeks. Chen made the decision that would define the battle. "All vessels engage the command ship immediately. We end this before they can adapt." The final phase of the battle brought all 5 human warships against the massive Devourer command vessel, a creature the size of a small city that pulsed with organic activity. The combined firepower of humanity's railguns focused on a single target, sending tungsten projectiles weighing tons each at the alien ship's hull. The command vessel's adaptive membrane shifted through dozens of configurations in seconds, attempting to find some defense against the kinetic assault. But biological adaptation had limits, and kinetic energy delivered at relativistic velocities was a force that evolution had never prepared the Devourers to counter. The command ship began to break apart under the sustained assault, its organic hull structure failing as internal pressure systems ruptured and support frameworks collapsed. Secondary explosions rippled through its mass as critical systems overloaded, creating a cascade of destruction that propagated throughout the vessel's living tissues. "Command vessel is showing catastrophic structural failure," Lieutenant Murphy reported. "Internal explosions are spreading throughout its hull. The death of the command ship had immediate effects across the Devourer formation. Remaining vessels began moving in uncoordinated patterns, their hive-mind communication network disrupted by the loss of their central coordination node. Some ships continued their consumption operations, while others attempted to flee the system entirely." "All vessels, pursue fleeing units," Chen ordered. "We cannot allow any Devourers to escape and warn others about kinetic weapons." The pursuit phase lasted 18 hours, with human ships tracking down scattered Devourer vessels throughout the system. Each engagement followed the same pattern. Tungsten projectiles moving at impossible speeds met organic hulls, evolved to resist energy weapons with predictably devastating results. When the last Devourer vessel finally broke apart under railgun fire, the silence that settled over the human fleet was profound. They had achieved something no galactic civilization had managed in thousands of years, the complete destruction of a Devourer invasion force. "Captain Chen?" came Keeper Veln's voice over the communication system, his tone filled with amazement. "Your kinetic weapons have achieved what we believed impossible. Not a single Devourer vessel remains operational in our system." Chen slumped back in her command chair, feeling the weight of exhaustion and accomplishment in equal measure. "Keeper Veln, what's the status of the biological spores the command ship released?" "Our analysis indicates they require specific conditions to develop into new vessels. Without the command ship's coordination, they will likely remain dormant indefinitely." Velm paused. "Captain, we are transmitting full battle recordings to the Galactic Council. Every civilization in the galaxy will want to understand how kinetic weapons achieved such devastating effectiveness." As the human fleet regrouped near the Keeper research station, Chen realized that they had accomplished far more than saving one alien civilization. They had demonstrated that humanity's primitive weapons represented a paradigm shift in galactic warfare. The galaxy would never again dismiss kinetic systems as obsolete technology. "All vessels stand down from combat alert," she announced to the fleet. "Commence damage assessment and prepare detailed battle reports. We have just written the opening chapter of humanity's role in galactic civilization." The battle was over, but Chen understood that the real work was just beginning. News of their victory would spread throughout the galaxy, changing everything about how civilizations approached warfare and defense. Humanity had earned their place among the stars not through advanced technology or diplomatic skill, but by perfecting the ancient art of hitting things very, very hard. 3 days after the complete destruction of the Devourer invasion force, Captain Sarah Chen found herself participating in her first Galactic Council emergency session. The human fleet remained in orbit around Keeper Research Station Gamma 9, their railguns powered down but ready, while representatives from dozens of alien civilizations debated the implications of humanity's unprecedented victory. The council chamber was a massive holographic construct that allowed beings from across the galaxy to participate simultaneously, their forms projected through faster-than-light communication networks that spanned thousands of light-years. Chen sat at a newly created position marked simply as Earth Representative, surrounded by creatures that challenged every assumption about intelligent life. "The battle recordings are unprecedented in galactic military history," announced Counselor Zeth Ka, a crystalline being whose voice resonated through harmonic frequencies. "No civilization has achieved complete victory against a devourer invasion force in over 12,000 years." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the virtual assembly, transmitted through translation systems that converted alien communication methods into forms each species could understand. Chen noticed that several representatives seemed to be studying her with expressions she couldn't interpret, though their interest was unmistakably intense. "The tactical analysis is equally fascinating," added Counselor Miravos, whose gaseous form shifted colors as she spoke. "The human weapons operate on principles that our civilizations abandoned 50 millennia ago, yet their effectiveness against devourer adaptive systems suggests we may have overlooked fundamental advantages of kinetic warfare." Keeper Veln, serving as humanity's advocate, activated a holographic display showing the battle footage in precise detail. A key factor appears to be the velocity of human projectiles. At 15% of light speed, their tungsten rounds deliver kinetic energy that biological adaptation cannot counter in real time. Chen cleared her throat, feeling the weight of representing her entire species before an audience of galactic civilizations. "Honored counselors, I should clarify that our weapon systems represent centuries of human development. We never abandoned kinetic principles because we found them fundamentally sound when properly applied. This is precisely what intrigues us," responded Counselor Thane Rid, a being whose multiple arms gestured in complex patterns as he spoke. "Your species has perfected technologies that we discarded as primitive, yet achieved results that our most advanced systems cannot match." The discussion continued for hours, with various council members analyzing every aspect of the battle from multiple perspectives. Chen began to understand that the victory had implications far beyond saving one research station. The galaxy was facing a paradigm shift that challenged thousands of years of military doctrine. "The question before us," announced Supreme Counselor Vex Prime, whose ancient voice carried the authority of millennia, "is whether humanity should be granted immediate council membership based on their demonstrated military capability, or whether they should undergo the standard evaluation process. With respect—" "Supreme Counselor," interjected Counselor Zara Lin, a reptilian being with distinctly hostile undertones, "one military victory does not necessarily qualify a species for council membership. The humans may be effective warriors, but do they possess the diplomatic sophistication required for galactic governance?" Chen felt a flash of irritation at the condescending tone, but Keeper Veln spoke before she could respond. "Counselor Zara Lin, the humans demonstrated remarkable strategic thinking and tactical flexibility during their engagement with the Devourers. Their approach to the battle showed sophisticated understanding of adaptive enemy systems." "Moreover," added another voice, this one belonging to Counselor Fleet Master Corvin, "their willingness to respond to our distress call speaks well of their character." The debate raged for several more hours, with various factions emerging around different proposals for humanity's status. Chen found herself increasingly frustrated with the political maneuvering, but she understood that this was how galactic civilization functioned, through consensus building and careful diplomacy. Finally, Supreme Counselor Vexi Map called for order. "We will recess for individual species consultation. When we reconvene in 6 hours, each delegation will present their position on humanity's application for council membership." As the session ended, Chen found herself alone with Keeper Veln in a smaller conference chamber aboard the research station. The alien administrator seemed pleased despite the lengthy political process. "Captain Chen, you should understand that what we witnessed today is remarkable," Veln explained. "The Galactic Council typically requires decades of evaluation before granting membership to new species. The fact that they are considering immediate acceptance based on your military demonstration is unprecedented." "But there's opposition," Chen observed. "Some of them clearly don't want humans involved in galactic politics." "Of course. Change always creates resistance, and your victory has implications that extend far beyond military applications. If kinetic weapons prove superior to energy-based systems, entire civilizations will need to restructure their defense industries." Chen considered this perspective. She had been focused on the immediate tactical implications of their victory, but Veln was right about the broader consequences. Humanity had potentially made obsolete thousands of years of galactic military development. Keeper Velm, what happens if the Council decides against immediate membership? Then you would enter the standard evaluation process, which typically takes 50 to 100 years. However, Velm paused meaningfully. Word of your victory is already spreading throughout the galaxy. Other civilizations may approach Earth directly, bypassing the Council entirely. This was exactly what Chen had been hoping to hear. Even if the formal political process failed, humanity had demonstrated their value to galactic civilization. The railgun technology that had seemed primitive to advanced civilizations had proven devastatingly effective against their greatest threat. When the Council reconvened, the debate was notably different in tone. Several species that had been neutral during the first session now spoke in favor of immediate human membership, while those opposed seemed less confident in their positions. The hegemony of Vor supports immediate Council membership for humanity, announced Councillor Thon Ride. Their kinetic weapons technology could provide crucial advantages in future Devourer encounters. The Crystal Communes agree, added Councillor Zethka. The strategic implications of successful anti-Devourer tactics outweigh concerns about diplomatic experience. However, Councillor Zara Lin remained adamant in her opposition. The humans may be effective warriors, but they have shown no evidence of the intellectual sophistication required for Council participation. Their technology is based on primitive principles that civilized species abandoned millennia ago. Chen had heard enough. Rising from her seat, she activated the holographic display system to show detailed technical specifications of the UES railgun. Councillor Zara Lin, you describe our weapons as primitive, but I suspect you don't fully understand their complexity. The display showed cutaway views of the electromagnetic acceleration systems, fusion reactors, and targeting computers that made human railguns possible. Achieving 15% of light speed requires precise control of electromagnetic fields, molecular-level materials engineering, and computer systems capable of calculating trajectories across interstellar distances. She continued, warming to her subject. You call these principles primitive because you abandoned them 50,000 years ago. We call them fundamental because we spent 50,000 years perfecting them. The difference in perspective explains why your energy weapons cannot counter Devourer adaptation, while our kinetic systems are devastatingly effective. The chamber fell silent as alien representatives studied the technical data. Chen could see several of them reconsidering their positions as they realized the sophistication required to make primitive weapons work at galactic scales. Furthermore, Chen continued, our victory over the Devourers was not achieved through superior firepower alone. It required tactical analysis, strategic planning, and coordination between multiple vessels under combat conditions. These are not the actions of primitive warriors, but of sophisticated military professionals. Councillor Miravas shifted colors rapidly, indicating what Chen had learned was intense interest. Captain Chen, your technical presentations are impressive, but we remain curious about human diplomatic capabilities. How would your species approach conflicts that cannot be resolved through military action? Chen had anticipated this question. Counselor, humanity has survived and thrived on a world where multiple intelligent subspecies competed for resources. We developed diplomacy not as a luxury of advanced civilization, but as a necessity for survival. Our history includes both terrible wars and remarkable periods of cooperation, but we learned that sustainable solutions require mutual benefit rather than dominance. She activated another display showing Earth's political structure. Our current global government represents the voluntary cooperation of hundreds of formerly independent nations, each with distinct cultures and interests. We achieve this cooperation through negotiation, compromise, and the recognition that shared challenges require shared solutions. Like the Devourer threat, observed Councillor Fleetmaster Corvin. When Keeper Veln's distress call reached Earth, our response was unanimous across all human factions. The threat to galactic civilization was too important for political divisions. The debate continued, but Chen could sense the momentum shifting in humanity's favor. The technical sophistication argument had addressed concerns about intellectual capability, while the diplomatic history response had countered questions about political readiness. Finally, Supreme Councillor Vex Prime called for the formal vote. The question before the Council: should humanity be granted immediate membership status based on their demonstrated military capability and diplomatic potential? The voting process was conducted through encrypted quantum channels, with each species' decision transmitted simultaneously to prevent influence between delegations. Chen watched the holographic display as votes appeared in colors indicating support, opposition, or abstention. When the final tally appeared, Chen felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with relief. 47 civilizations supported immediate membership, 12 opposed, and 6 abstained. Humanity had achieved the two-thirds majority required for Council acceptance. The Galactic Council formally recognizes Earth and humanity as full members of galactic civilization, announced Supreme Counselor Vex Prime. Captain Chen, your species has earned its place among the stars through demonstrated capability and character. The implications hit Chen like a physical force. In less than 6 months, humanity had gone from planetary isolation to full membership in a galactic community that spanned thousands of civilizations. The desperate call for help that had reached Earth's monitoring stations had become the catalyst for humanity's entry into a larger universe. Supreme Counselor, Chen said, standing to address the assembly, humanity is honored by the Council's confidence. We accept membership with full understanding of the responsibilities involved. Our kinetic weapons technology will be made available to all Council members for defense against Devourer incursions. Excellent, replied Vex Prime. However, membership also requires establishment of permanent diplomatic presence at Council headquarters. Are you prepared to designate representatives? Chen smiled. This was the moment she had been preparing for throughout the journey from Earth. I am authorized to establish humanity's first galactic embassy, with diplomatic staff drawn from our finest experts in xenology, technology, and interstellar law. As the session ended, Chen found herself surrounded by representatives from dozens of civilizations, each eager to establish formal relations with humanity. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, and defense pacts were discussed in rapid succession, creating opportunities that would transform human civilization within decades. Keeper Veln approached her during a brief recess. Captain Chen, there is something else you should know? Intelligence reports indicate that news of your victory has reached other Devourer forces in distant sectors of the galaxy. They are beginning to modify their ship designs to counter kinetic weapons. Chen nodded grimly. Then we'll modify our weapons to counter their modifications. That's what humans do. We adapt and improve. Indeed, Veln replied. But there is also good news. Over 200 civilizations have requested technical specifications for railgun systems. Your victory has inspired a renaissance in kinetic weapon development that may change galactic warfare permanently. As Chen looked out at the diverse assembly of galactic representatives, she realized that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had not just saved one alien civilization or gained membership in the Galactic Council. They had demonstrated that sometimes the greatest sophistication lay in perfecting the fundamentals, and that primitive principles could become devastating advantages when properly applied. The galaxy would never again dismiss kinetic weapons as obsolete technology, and humanity would never again face the universe alone. The railguns that had seemed like simple electromagnetic accelerators had become the keys to galactic citizenship, proving that the most effective weapons were not always the most advanced ones. The true measure of technological sophistication was not complexity, but effectiveness. And by that measure, humanity had just demonstrated they belonged among the stars. 6 months after humanity's victory at Research Station Gamma 9, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Galactic Council Station Prime, watching the construction of humanity's first interstellar shipyard. The massive facility sprawled across several kilometers of space, its framework alive with the activity of dozens of alien species working alongside human engineers to build something the galaxy had never seen before. The integration is proceeding faster than anticipated, observed Ambassador Elena Vasquez, who had transitioned from Earth's leading xenobiologist to humanity's first galactic diplomat. 17 civilizations have already implemented kinetic weapon systems based on our railgun technology. Chen nodded, studying the readouts on her tablet that showed the current status of what the Council had designated the kinetic renaissance. The data was staggering. Over 300 civilizations had requested technical assistance in developing railgun systems, while dozens more were redesigning their entire military doctrines around kinetic warfare principles. Any word from the Devourer response teams? Chen asked. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing the galactic map with recent Devourer encounters highlighted in red. The results have been mixed. Our original railgun designs remain highly effective, but the Devourers are beginning to adapt. Intelligence reports from the Outer Rim suggest they're developing new hull materials that can absorb kinetic energy more effectively. How much more effectively? Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Approximately 30% reduction in damage from standard tungsten projectiles, Vasquez replied grimly. Still vulnerable, but not the complete tactical surprise we achieved at Gamma 9. Chen had expected this development. The Devourers had survived for millennia by adapting to counter every weapon system the galaxy could produce. It was inevitable that they would eventually develop countermeasures for kinetic weapons as well. What about the new ammunition types? She asked. Vasquez's expression brightened considerably. Now that's where things get interesting. The collaborative research programs with the Keepers and the Crystal Communes have produced some remarkable results. She activated another display showing weapon specifications that would have seemed like science fiction just months earlier. The Keepers contributed their expertise in exotic matter manipulation, while the Crystal Communes provided crystalline matrices that can store massive amounts of energy. When we combine these technologies with human electromagnetic acceleration systems, the display showed projectiles that were far more sophisticated than simple tungsten rods. These new rounds incorporated exotic matter cores that could phase through normal matter until impact, crystalline structures that release stored energy on contact, and even self-guided systems that could adjust trajectory during flight. Impressive, Chen admitted. Test results? Devastating. The exotic matter rounds can penetrate any known shielding system because they exist partially outside normal spacetime until the moment of impact. The energy storage crystals release the equivalent of antimatter explosions in controlled bursts, and the guided projectiles can pursue evasive targets across interplanetary distances. Chen felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. Humanity had introduced the galaxy to kinetic warfare, but galactic civilization was returning the favor by showing humans what was possible when their fundamental principles were enhanced with technologies beyond terrestrial understanding. How are the Devourers responding to these new weapon types? They're not, Vasquez replied with satisfaction. At least not yet. The first engagements using enhanced kinetic systems resulted in complete tactical victories with 0 Devourer survivors to report back on human capabilities. The implications were significant. By combining human kinetic weapons with alien technologies, they had created weapon systems that even the adaptable Devourers couldn't counter in real time. But Chen knew this advantage would be temporary. The key was to press their advantage while they still held it. What's the status of the new fleet construction? Chen asked, looking back at the massive shipyard operations visible through the observation deck. The first squadron of enhanced kinetic vessels will be operational within 3 months, Vasquez reported. But these aren't just upgraded versions of our original railgun ships. The alien engineering assistance has allowed us to build something unprecedented. She activated a holographic projection showing the new ship design, and Chen immediately understood why the construction was taking so long. The vessel was massive, nearly 5 kilometers in length, and bristled with weapon systems that incorporated technologies from dozens of different civilizations. This is the prototype for the new Dreadnought class, Vasquez explained. The primary armament consists of 24 enhanced railguns capable of firing exotic matter projectiles at 25% of light speed. Secondary systems include rapid-fire crystalline energy weapons and guided kinetic missile systems. Chen studied the specifications with growing amazement. The power requirements must be enormous, which is where our Keeper allies really proved their worth. They've provided us with zero-point energy extraction systems that can power weapons of virtually unlimited scale. Vasquez paused. Sarah, these ships will be capable of engaging entire Devourer fleets single-handedly. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the council chambers. Ambassador Vasquez, Captain Chen, your immediate presence is requested for emergency session. Priority Alpha protocols are in effect. Chen and Vasquez exchanged glances. Priority Alpha meant a threat to galactic civilization itself, the highest possible emergency classification. They arrived at the council chamber to find representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered in emergency session. The atmosphere was tense, with excited conversations in dozens of alien languages creating a cacophony of sound that the translation system struggled to process. Supreme Counselor Vex Prime called for order as Chen and Vasquez took their positions at the human delegation table. Honored representatives, we have received intelligence reports that require immediate council attention. The central holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with sectors highlighted in various colors. Chen immediately noticed that several regions she remembered as populated systems were now marked in the black that indicated complete Devourer consumption. Our long-range reconnaissance missions have discovered evidence of unprecedented Devourer activity in the galactic core regions, Vex Prime continued. Intelligence suggests they are abandoning their traditional consumption patterns in favor of massive fleet concentrations. Keeper Val, now serving as the Council's primary Devourer expert, activated additional displays showing ship movement patterns. The data indicates that Devourer forces from across the galaxy are converging on a central staging area approximately 12,000 light-years from our current position. Staging area for what? Asked Counselor Zara Lin, her hostility toward humans apparently set aside in the face of a greater threat. Unknown, but the fleet concentration includes vessels we have never encountered before. Ships the size of small moons with capabilities that exceed anything in our historical records. Veln paused, his translucent features showing stress patterns. We estimate the assembled Devourer force contains over 10,000 primary vessels and support craft numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. The Devourers weren't just adapting to counter-kinetic weapons. They were preparing for a campaign of galactic conquest on a scale never before attempted. "What's their estimated target?" Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Analysis of their movement patterns suggests they intend to sweep through the galactic spiral arms in a coordinated campaign consuming entire sectors in systematic progression," Vex Prime replied grimly. "At their historical consumption rates, this force could devour every inhabited system in the galaxy within 500 years. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the representatives contemplated the end of galactic civilization. Chen felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Humanity's kinetic weapons had provided hope against the Devourers, but this threat was orders of magnitude greater than anything they had previously faced. "What are our options?" she asked. Counselor Fleetmaster Corvin activated tactical displays showing current galactic defense capabilities. Traditional energy-based weapons have proven ineffective against standard Devourer forces. Even with the kinetic weapon renaissance, we lack sufficient fleet strength to engage 10,000 enemy vessels simultaneously. "However," interrupted a new voice, one that Chen didn't recognize, "there may be alternatives to direct military confrontation." The speaker was introduced as Counselor DeepMind Zax, representing a collective intelligence that spanned multiple star systems. "Our analysis suggests that the Devourer fleet concentration represents both a threat and an opportunity. By gathering their forces in a central location, they have created a single target for weapons of unprecedented scale." Chen felt her tactical instincts engaging. "What kind of weapons?" "The theoretical foundations exist in human kinetic principles combined with galactic exotic matter technology," Zax replied. "A projectile delivery system capable of accelerating massive payloads to significant fractions of light speed across interstellar distances." The concept that began to emerge during the subsequent discussion was staggering in its audacity. Using the combined technological resources of galactic civilization, they would construct a weapon system capable of firing projectiles across thousands of light years with enough kinetic energy to shatter entire fleets. "You're talking about a galaxy-spanning railgun," Chen said slowly, working through the implications. "Precisely. A series of electromagnetic acceleration stages positioned throughout multiple star systems, designed to accelerate specially designed projectiles to velocities approaching 30% of light speed." Zax's multiple voices harmonized as the collective intelligence spoke. The kinetic energy release would be equivalent to stellar explosions, but concentrated into projectiles small enough to penetrate Devourer defenses. The engineering challenges were staggering, but Chen could see the theoretical soundness of the approach. Human kinetic principles scaled up to galactic proportions using technologies that no single civilization could have developed alone. "Construction timeline?" asked Vasquez. "Using the combined industrial capacity of all Council civilizations, approximately 18 months for a single-shot system," replied Zax. "However, we would need to begin immediately, and the project would require unprecedented cooperation between species." Supreme Counselor Vex Prime called for formal debate on what became known as the Galactic Kinetic Initiative. The discussion that followed revealed the true scope of what they were proposing. The largest engineering project in galactic history, designed to build a weapon that could destroy entire fleets from across the galaxy. "The risks are enormous," observed Counselor Miravos. "If the project fails, we will have devoted our entire defensive capability to a single weapon system. But if it succeeds," countered Keeper Vilm, "we could eliminate the Devourer threat permanently. Not just defeat this fleet, but demonstrate that galactic civilization possesses weapons capable of destroying any force they can assemble." The vote was closer than Chen had expected, but the proposal passed with the narrow majority required for emergency measures. Over the following days, she watched in amazement as the galaxy began mobilizing for the most ambitious project in its history. Entire star systems were converted to industrial production. Species that had been rivals for millennia began working together on common engineering challenges. Human kinetic weapon specialists found themselves coordinating with alien exotic matter physicists to solve problems that neither could have addressed alone. Chen was appointed as the project's military coordinator, responsible for ensuring that the weapon system would be tactically effective when completed. The responsibility was overwhelming. If the Galactic Kinetic Initiative failed, there would be no second chance against the assembled Devourer fleet. As she stood on the observation deck watching the construction of humanity's contribution to the project, a series of electromagnetic acceleration stations that would serve as the weapon's final firing stages, Chen reflected on how far they had come from that first desperate distress call from Research Station Gamma 9. Humanity had entered galactic civilization by demonstrating the effectiveness of kinetic weapons against adaptive enemies. Now they were leading a galactic alliance in building the ultimate kinetic weapon, a system capable of eliminating threats across interstellar distances. The irony was perfect. The galaxy had dismissed kinetic weapons as primitive technology for 50,000 years. Now their survival depended on scaling those same primitive principles to cosmic proportions. In 18 months, they would discover whether human engineering combined with galactic resources could build a weapon capable of saving civilization itself. The Devourers had adapted to counter every advanced technology the galaxy possessed, but they had never faced a tungsten projectile moving at 30% of light speed, fired from a gun the size of a solar system. The final battle for galactic civilization would be fought with the oldest weapon in the universe, something hard, moving very fast, in a straight line. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting that simple concept. Now they would discover if perfection was enough to save the galaxy.s.